I have my list of questions here.
Okay.
I'm sure you're aware you're approaching your 20th season.
I've heard that, yeah.
Coach.
Yes.
Simple question. What does that feel like for you? What emotions are circling around? And has it sunk in for you yet that you're about to surpass Hayden Fry's record?
I really haven't thought a lot about it, quite frankly, but thanks to having outside people watching, people remind you of it, and the topic came up this past spring. But, I really haven't thought a lot about it. I think the bigger picture is I really feel fortunate to be in a place where you can have some stability. And not only, going into our 20th year, we haven't made it that far yet, but going into our 20th year, I think if you couple it with the fact that Coach Fry was here for 20, it really makes Iowa kind of unique and very extraordinary. Yeah, we haven't talked about that topic, but I got to see him back, I guess it was in late April. I got to go visit him. He's living in Dallas now. He and his wife have moved back to Dallas where all their families are. Kids are. So anyway, had a good opportunity to visit with him. His sense of humor is still outstanding. Still telling the same bad jokes he was 20 years ago. But no, he's in a great mood. We really didn't talk about that, but I think the overriding theme when we visited, I think he's really proud of everybody. He's got a large family tree, a lot of guys that have gone into coaching. And I think he's just proud of everybody's opportunity to go off and do some things and have success. And I do know he takes tremendous pride in the collective equation there. Well, I think anything you do in life, if it's competitive, which most things are, but anything you do in life, I think you're always constantly looking for better ways to do it. Whether it's being more efficient or just finding a better approach maybe. So it's kind of interesting in what we do. The two main things we do are recruit, and then we develop the players that we do recruit. So with recruiting, you have no choice because the world of recruiting has changed so much. And the rules have affected our lives. For instance, we just hosted, I think 13, 14 official visitors this past weekend on our campus, and had them here for 2.5 days. So anyway, I guess 2 days. But, that was totally new. Years past, it's always been December, January, occasional in-season visits, but this was new legislature. So it really forced us to rethink our strategies, rethink everything we're doing. And recruiting does that anyway, just because of the social media, advent of social media right on through. It's been constantly and continually evolving. Football, on the other hand, I don't think has changed all that much in, probably 40 years, in my opinion. Some things have changed a little bit, but basically what's good is good and what's bad is bad. But to that point, we dramatically changed our whole approach in 2015, went to a morning schedule as opposed to afternoon schedule. And, it was a little bit different, and the way we do it is really different than most anybody in the country. And that was a little scary, but we found it to be beneficial, at least for us. So, on that front, it's not as maybe frequent, but you're still always looking for a better way to do things. And the bottom line is, how can you better develop your players into good, productive guys on the team? They're going to have a chance to graduate, have a chance to play good football, and then, be good citizens in the community. Yeah, I'm thinking more of a moment. You said moment. There's a moment where I thought it might not work, and it just, we had a rough beginning. The first 2 years weren't easy. First 2 seasons, especially the first season and a half. But there was one moment where I went home one night. I allowed myself one night, it was a Wednesday night, to think, maybe this isn't going to go. Because we had an unfortunate injury in practice that day in a place where we couldn't afford it. And it was just like, maybe this isn't meant to be. But the next morning, that thought was completely washed out of my mind. It was straight ahead. As far as a turnaround moment, I'm not sure there was, other than I think it was just kind of a continual process, like any time you're trying to do something. Yeah. Probably if I had to pinpoint one moment that was encouraging, at least, would have been our first year. We just went up to Wisconsin. It was the day they clinched the Big Ten title, berth to the Rose Bowl. Ron Dane sent the NCAA record. It was a tremendous environment. and they just had a celebration basically for the 60-minute game, and we were the the invitees, if you will, to be the. But that was not a high point by any stretch. But the one positive I took out of it, I told our guys that's exactly what we're striving for. That's the environment we want to have in Kinnick. We want to be able to clinch one of those, which we're able to do the same thing in 2004 against Wisconsin, ironically, although they were a little better team than we were facing them. But that next week, we played Minnesota. They were in the top 20. We had more than enough chances to win it in the fourth quarter. We couldn't quite get it done, couldn't complete a fourth down pass. But the point I guess what I'd make, we totally got trounced the week before, but came back, went back to work that week, had a good week of practice, and really competed in a way that I think everybody could have been proud of. The objective is still to win, but the whole idea is to go out and do your best and show improvement. And that game, I think, at least showed us that maybe we're on the right track, and maybe we weren't that far away from doing something positive. No, and it's interesting in that, like, I've really never had a dream job per se. You think you might want to do this, think you might want to do that. There was a while where I thought I might play or want to coach in the pros. But then, you start looking at the places where you might want to live, and couple that with places, where they had a coach you might want to work with. And that list got pretty slim, so I didn't spend much time on it. I've never had a bad job, but the one thing that was unique to this situation, it was interesting. The day Coach Fry retired, I'll never forget that, because it's kind of like, you never think your dad's going to die, and the reality is it probably will happen. I don't know if any of us ever thought Coach Fry would retire, and it was a Monday. I remember sitting at my desk, we were game planning, getting ready for the next opponent. Maybe it was a Tuesday, but it was early in the week, and Ozzie Newsome walked down the hall from the other end of the building and said, "Hey, why don't you come down to my office? We've got the press conference on you might want to watch." And it was Coach Fry's press conference. So it was kind of one of those moments you have as a person, like, geez, I can't believe I was going to have a new coach. And then it just worked out where I ended up being a candidate. I was not dying to be a head coach necessarily anywhere. I was not really even thinking about going back to college football. But the way it is and the way it was, I mean, this is probably the only job I would have even entertained thoughts about in college. I just, I was happy in the NFL. I'd been there 6 years, enjoying that life. But because we had lived here, my wife and I both had really strong feelings about the university, the community, and we were raising a young family. And the NFL is not a great place for stability. It's really rare there, and at least we thought we might have an opportunity to have some longevity if we had a chance to go back there. So it just worked out. Yeah, it's my canned answer on that one is I've never really had a compelling reason to leave. And the way I've always evaluated jobs, first and foremost, is it good for your family. It's got to be a good situation there, which Iowa checks every box. Then you want to be somewhere, I think, where you have a competitive opportunity to be successful. We don't have the biggest bat in the dugout maybe here, but we've, and under Coach Fry, it's proven that, Iowa could compete at the top of the Big Ten. Things really have to be right, but it's possible. So, and then, along with that, you have to have good leadership on campus. And that was a little bit of a leap of faith, quite frankly, because I really didn't know Bob Bowlesby, and I certainly didn't know Mary Sue Coleman. They were the president and AD at the time when I got hired. So, but I also had faith in the culture of Iowa, and just felt like my guess was it was going to be a pretty good environment that way, which it turned out to be, obviously. So that part was really good. And as far as leaving, again, I've never really had a compelling reason. We've had great leadership here. I've worked very well with every president that we've had, and they've all been tremendous, all very different, but very gifted people and tremendous people. And then we are unique in that we've had 3 athletic directors since 1970. That's unheard of in major college athletics. But as a coach, I really appreciate that, because every day I come to work, I know what the expectations are, what the culture is expected to be, what it should be. So, those are things that, you're not going to get everywhere. And I really value those things. I've had a great appreciation for that. And just, living in this state is, we thoroughly enjoyed our 9 years in the 80s, and, just love it now. And the last part of your question was, the benefit to me is that I'm not just working here. We live here, we're part of the community. We're not just a mercenary worker, punching the clock and, here for 5 years and off to the next job, that type of thing. So that lifestyle never really appealed to me. In fact, that was something that I was hoping I could avoid. I picked the wrong profession for that, but so it's just dumb luck that it's worked out that way. Yeah, I'll answer the back part, and hopefully I'll still be coaching. It's going to require good health, and hopefully things work out that way. But it just when I talk to recruits, I compare the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, to the Iowa Hawkeyes. The Steelers have had 3 head coaches since 1969, and I think the credit there goes to the Rooney family. And it started out with Mr. Rooney Sr. Now his sons are running the team. But the thing, outsider looking in, the Rooneys have always understood and appreciated the fact that the NFL is a very competitive place, and there are going to be good years, and there are going to be years that aren't as good. And the American way right now is to make somebody walk the plank, either the head coach or some assistants, that type of thing. But to me, the Steelers always took a little different approach. And that is the NFL model. Get a new coach every X amount of years. The Steelers, I think, always looked at it. What do we need to do to correct things? How do we improve things? How do we, get back into the race? And I've appreciated that at Iowa, because I think that's been the mode of operation here, going back to Coach Fry. What we do is very competitive. The Big Ten is extremely competitive. It's become more competitive now with the addition of several, outside teams. So, but that's major college football, and it takes strong leaders on campus to understand and appreciate the fact that not every day is going to be a good day. There are going to be times where you come up a little short, and we've certainly had years where we've done very well. We've had years where we've come real close, but didn't quite make it. And then we were 4-8 not that long ago. So to me, the issue is okay, if you got the right people in place, then let's identify what the challenges are, and then more importantly, what are the solutions, and focus on that rather than just changing laundry, that kind of stuff. And it's to me that's where the real crux of the thing is, and I'm so appreciative again that I work in a place where you're allowed to do that and have that approach. I mean, I could give you about 100 of them, easy. That's a tough one. Yeah. I'll throw a name at you that came up yesterday in conversation with a gentleman. It's kind of interesting. Eric Guthrie, nicknamed Gus, walked on here. He was a presidential scholar, so he came here on an academic scholarship from Nevada, Iowa. And we thought he had a chance to be a punter. When he got here, I mean, it was like, wow. This is going to be interesting. And quite frankly, if he wasn't such a great kid and had such a great attitude, I'm not sure we would have kept him on the football team, but he did. He was just like a delight to be around every day, but he had a lot of work to do. And I try to see everything half full, or the bright side of things, but realistically, I figured this guy's never going to play. I mean, no chance. And he just worked his tail off. His 5th year, he punted great for us and was the last cut guy with Tampa Bay. And I would have, never predicted that at the onset of his career. So you think about a guy like that kind of story, kind of going off on a different path here. But I think about guys like Will Lack, when he was a walk on here, and he'd go out and try to block Colin Cole twice a week, which was not fun. Will weighed about 250. And he was a pre-med student on top of that, so he was achieving at the highest level academically, and yet, playing on the team. And I remember asking him before his senior year why he did it. How much sleep did you get a night? 4 to 5 hours. Good night would be 6 to 7, 4 to 5 on average, because he was working a job at the hospital. And I asked him, why do you do this? You go out and get beat up in practice, you are getting beat up in the classroom, and then you beat yourself up working, all that kind of stuff. But for him, it's just being part of the team. That meant a lot to him. And so you learn from your players, and you watch somebody like that who went on to go to Harvard Medical School. Now he's at Loyola Chicago, and he's just getting ready to. He and his wife are moving out to Seattle. They're going to the University of Washington. You look at the kind of success he's had post football, but that was important to him to be part of it. So we all know the names. Back in that era, it was Banks and Clark and Gallery, Kading. We all know those names, but the rest of the story, some of the guys that really, made that team special were people like Will Lack, and, I could go right down the list. So, it's kind of neat to see those stories. And that's one thing about being a coach, I guess. Everybody kind of gets access to the well-known players, but we know a lot about stories of players that most people never heard of. So I think that's kind of neat.
And why?
Oh yeah, I just mentioned Dallas Clark. Everything he did was fun to watch because he had so much fun playing. And Bill Polian said this to me one time after Dallas was a couple of years in their organization. He said, I think Dallas Clark enjoys everything about football, including getting his ankles taped. And that was really a good description of Dallas. When he walked in the building, you would never see him in a anything but a positive mode. He just exudes energy, and Greenway was kind of the same way. So, yeah, watch that. But I appreciate the way all of our guys play. Bob Sanders, played the game 120 miles an hour. He was just always full speed, to the point where we'd have to throw him out of practice at times because he wasn't trying to be a jerk. He just couldn't tone it down, and you can't do that in practice all the time. There's time and place for everything. So, you could go right down the list from back in the early years till, most recent. We've had a lot of guys, and you see a guy like Marshall Yonda in and out of the building on a frequent basis this time of year. You wonder why he's such a great pro. Well, he's got such a routine. He just understands exactly what he needs to do. So, again, coaches learn from everybody, and whether it's an all-pro player like Yonda or a guy like Will Lack, who's really never played a meaningful down yet, this experience was meaningful to him. Well, it's going back to the subject of why I never left Iowa. That was a pretty compelling reason too, and that's just something you can't put a price tag on. That experience. And when I talk to people about it, it's interesting because we miss a lot, and I say we college coaches miss a lot of what our kids are doing growing up. And my wife always, she was the key player in this. She always did a great job of explaining that to our kids, all of our kids, and explaining to them that, because of what I did, they got to do some things maybe other kids wouldn't be able to do, like go to a bowl game or what have you. So she always did a nice job of that. But for me personally, it was just neat to be on the field with them. It was neat to just walk by their locker, even though they may not be there. Brian's locker was always right on the corner there, so I'd walk by it, and he may not be there, but at least I'd saw it, and kind of knew he was part of things. And the other reason it probably worked well is I didn't coach them directly. I wasn't in the room with them every day, really getting in depth with critiquing them, that type of thing. That might have been a different dynamic, but so I feel really fortunate that happened, and really fortunate also all three of them. They had different careers, but they all really, I think, enjoyed the experience, and would do it again, which is a good thing. And none of them played quarterback. That was the other key thing, because my wife would have put an end to that. There's no way, a coach's kid can play quarterback. Like that's a death sentence right there. No way. Yeah, the first point I would make is it's the relationship with the Children's Hospital is not exclusive to football. In that, for years, the athletes in all of our programs have been doing a good job of visiting up there. And I don't want to speak for all the other coaches, but I think, as I look at it, one of the big benefits I talk to our guys all the time about, one commonality all of us have when we're in the meeting room together, we all choose to do this, and it is a choice. Nobody has to do this, but we all choose to do it, and then the most important part is we're able to do it. So, you think about football, a lot of bravado. It's a tough game, physical, and you got to be mentally tough and all that kind of stuff. Until you go over to the hospital, especially the Children's Hospital, that to me is where you really see, what toughness is, what optimism is, great attitude. Those kinds of things. There's just something about young people that's it's amazing, and when they're challenged, it almost brings the best out of them sometimes. So it's kind of inspiring to watch that. And then the other thing I've learned through the time, in some ways, there's almost a connection to sports in that when you coach, young people, there's a connection, obviously, and when they leave, they don't leave. You're always kind of following what they do, and hopefully staying connected as you possibly can. So it doesn't just end when guys graduate, and I've noticed that with the Children's Hospital. If one of our players has an orthopedic issue, for instance, they get it repaired surgically, and that's not an easy thing to go through. But basically, they get through it, they do it, they rehab it, and it's kind of over. I've noticed with the Children's Hospital that a lot of times these young people after they leave, there's still an association with the nurses, the therapists that work with them, the doctors, and that connection stays alive. So in some ways it kind of parallels what we do in athletics. Obviously what they're doing is a lot more serious over there, but that's been neat. And then the people that my wife and I have gotten to meet and our players get to meet that do work with the children, they're exceptional. The families are great, and there's just a sense of community there. So I think it's really it's important and valuable to our athletes and to us as coaches. And it's also growing out the Ladies Football Academy. That was an initiative they started 8 years ago. It's been tremendously successful as a fundraiser and a friend-raiser. And it's just kind of, and then the Wave is maybe the all-time best tradition in sports. And the best part about it was just totally organic. Krista Young comes up with the idea in Anita, Iowa last May, and then all of a sudden it became a reality, and now it's been recognized worldwide. So it's really neat that way. It's simple concept, very organic. I don't know how you couldn't help it, embrace it, and so far at least it's not commercialized, which is even nicer. Hopefully it'll stay that way forever. And the only thing I'll add to that is I've said this too, I'm the head coach right now, so we still do the swarm. That was Coach Fry's creation, and certainly that's my choice to keep that alive. At some point there's going to be a new head coach here, and the swarm may or may not be part of our routine at that point, but I really feel confident the Wave will never, no matter who's coaching here, that's going to be part of Iowa football and part of Iowa. And I think it is just representative of our state. It's kind of where our state is. It's just people care. And their hearts are in the right place in general. So I think it's just it's fantastic that way. Yeah, I haven't thought a lot about that one yet either. So hopefully, if we've done anything, we've tried to be consistent. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I said we're always looking for ways to change, tweak, and improve the program. You have to if you're doing anything competitive. But I do think there's been a consistency. Hopefully outsiders would look at it and say that in terms of our approach, what we deem to be important. We feel like we have high standards. Not that makes us unique, but we think we have high standards on certain core values that are really important. And I think we're humanistic, yet at the same time there are standards, and we just have tried to be consistent in that mode, and not cut corners or made sacrifices on the short term to affect the long term. And I've always, and I guess maybe I feel fortunate again for being here, but every decision I make, that's a big decision. You try to think long term as well as the short term, and I think that's important. I think that's an obligation I have to the program, to the university. It's just how it goes. This building is an example that we almost did a patch on in our old facility, which in retrospect would have been really, I think, irresponsible to the program. And fortunately, we put the brakes on that and built something here that's going to last for decades and keep the program healthy for decades. So it took longer. It was a lot of effort and work, but it was the right thing to do. And hopefully that's representative of the way we've tried to make decisions over the last 19 years. To me, legacies, again, I haven't thought a lot about that, but what you do and what you are kind of speaks for itself. So I'd circle back to what I just said a minute ago. Hopefully, at least, if you look at it over the long haul, we were consistent in what we did. And, that's something I guess was important to me, because it was always important to me as an assistant coach. And I really admired people I worked for that were able to stay consistent, whether, the heat was really on, which it gets to be at times, or, things were going really well, because I think that's one of the great lessons of sports in general. And certainly life is very humbling, but sports teach you real quick that, you may think you walk on water, you don't. So anytime you do, boy, you're going to get knocked down real fast. And then on the other side, you're going to get knocked down, and that's part of life. And, we as a society probably struggle with that one a little bit more than we need to right now. But failing's how you learn. It's go back to Thomas Edison. There are a million people that have, anybody that's done anything has experienced failure. So instead of running from it or starting to amputate things, it's more important, I think, to learn from it and try to build off of that. And that's how life is. But so I think that's one of the beauties of sports. And hopefully we haven't been all over the place in terms of what we're thinking or how we're acting, that type of thing. To me, consistency is really important in anything you do, and I think that's people that work, whether it be our players, staff members. It's and I've worked in environments where there wasn't a lot of consistency, and that's a tough thing to be involved in. So hopefully we've had a stable environment that way. No, yeah, I do. Hopefully it's the first game. Hopefully there's no guarantees there. But whether it's first or 50th, I'll probably go home. Sit around maybe with the family and knock out a Ben and Jerry's, or maybe I'll have 2 that night. Hit the rack and get up the next morning, and go back to work. So, my life is really boring after a game. I do nothing, and I like it that way. That's the last thing I want to do is be out anywhere. Or anytime we have a bad loss, that's guaranteed to Ben and Jerry's too. Let's put in perspective, yeah.